The cornerstone of any good community is obviously safety. And that is why today we're going to be discussing the topic of safety, the topic of response times, accountability, and what's going on in the city of Buffalo between the mayor's office and the Buffalo Police with the president of the Buffalo PBA, Detective John Davidson. John, thank you so much for being on Lock in Buffalo, man. We really appreciate you being here.
I really appreciate being here, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to be on this platform and speak to the citizens of Buffalo and the surrounding suburbs.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the fact that you've been vocal and transparent about what's going on with the rank and file officers, of which you've been elected to be the singular voice of. But for folks in the audience that may not really follow union politics, why don't you give a little breakdown of what you do as the union representative?
So certainly, my main objective and my primary purpose as being PBA president is throughout the last decades and decades in Buffalo between the city and the union, there's been a contract that's been negotiated and revamped and added to and subtracted from. And my main job is just to make sure that that contract that's been agreed to by both parties is followed. And when it's not followed, there's a grievance process for us to try and rectify that. Or when we have members that say, I've been wronged, I can tell them sometimes, actually, that's not what the contract says, and you just got to go ahead and do your job. But for the most part, that's my main job, is to really kind of be a watchdog for the contract that's been worked on from presidents prior to me. And it's just my job to make sure that I don't screw it up, so to speak. And then in the day-to-day, that would be the macro. But on the micro, I answer a lot of phone calls. My office hours are always open door, so to speak. So deal with a lot of members individually and kind of put out fires as they pop up. I like to negotiate. I like to work together. So when somebody comes in with a problem, oftentimes I can reach out to a supervisor or even all the way up to the commissioner, and we can have a conversation and stop something before it becomes a bigger issue. I'm very proud of the fact that in my year and a half as PBA president, I've dealt with now 3 different commissioners, and our grievances are very low because I think I do a nice job of working with people and being willing to talk things out instead of just filing the grievance and saying, we'll just go to arbitration.
For the viewers as well, I think one point that would be really good to lay some level set groundwork on. Obviously, if you follow any of the local media, you've been seeing your face a lot pretty recently. And there's this obvious tension between the police department and the Buffalo Police Department, the rank and file officers. Obviously, you are there to be a mouthpiece for those individuals and this new administration. Could you educate myself and the viewers on kind of what's going on, what's transpired that's gotten to this point?
Certainly. So the biggest contributing factor to becoming PBA president was the fact that I am allowed to speak openly with the media and the news. As a patrol officer, it was very difficult for me at times to bite my tongue. And I like to be able to give a voice to the members. It's something that I really work hard to do. I try and be open and transparent and available to anybody in the media. And so regarding our contract, I stepped into the role and we were already approaching out of contract. So we went out of contract at the end of June of last year. So approaching 400 days that we've been out of contract. And until we hit 1 year, with the previous mayor, Chris Scanlon, we sat down, had one official negotiation meeting. We agreed to not negotiate in the media. I agreed to that with him. When I met with Sean Ryan in January 15th, I explained to him that I had already made that agreement with his predecessor, Chris Scanlon, and that I would hold to it with him as long as we were actually negotiating. And as we approached a year, I let himself and I let Maria White and some other people in his camp know at some point here I'm going to have to discuss how out of contract we are. And as we hit a year and there was little to no conversation with the mayor's office, that's when I started to kind of get out there and get on social media and let people know that the Buffalo Police Department, the members of the Buffalo PBA, they're working on an expired contract. And due to this, we're having mass retirements. We haven't hired an officer in almost a year. In this year, 2026, we've only hired 4 officers. and it's becoming a real problem. It's hard to recruit when you don't have contract certainty, especially when the suburbs are also struggling to get to police, not in the same way that cities are, but when you've got an opportunity to work for a town making quite a bit more money and you know your contract's settled through the next X amount of years, it's a more appetizing position than going to Buffalo where your contract's out. We're not sure if the mayor supports us. The media has been coming around, but there was a little while there where every article was negative. And the citizenry is almost been, I would say, in Buffalo and Western New York as a whole, it's a very pro-law enforcement community. But it was almost like people were afraid to bring that past their front door when leaving the house. And I think we've seen over the last few months people being a little more outspoken about, what's going on with this? Why are the police not being taken care of?
Yeah.
So I think that's been positive, and we're hoping that the mayor's office follows suit and maybe wants to work with us.
Well, we can hope that. I mean, so basically, John, from what you're saying, the core tenets of the concern are it's very difficult for you to recruit. You have this trend of retirement. Now, with retirees going out the door, you can't fill those spaces with new young officers because you're getting competition from the outlying suburbs. I think, I would imagine, and you can enlighten me, this is obviously my own speculation, but I would imagine in this state, it's got to be difficult to recruit people to get into law enforcement in general, with the fact that, the way you hear it discussed a lot is officers are kind of fighting with one hand tied behind their back. So bail reform is obviously a big issue. For those that don't understand the intricacies of that, I'd like my own enlightenment from somebody actually in law enforcement on how this impacts the job of being a law enforcement officer.
Certainly. So bail reform was championed by many Albany politicians, one of which is our current mayor, Sean Ryan, who at the time was in Albany in a different role. And bail reform basically changed a lot of the things that judges can do when it comes to bail. And for instance, and it also involved raising the age. Before, when you committed a violent crime or any crime, you were an adult and charged as an adult at 16. It changed to 18. And the things that judges can hold and put bail on you for now have been drastically reduced. There's several felonies that are now non-bail reform. Or I'm sorry, non-bail. So these judges are also having a hand tied behind their back. And officers do get disenfranchised when you make a quality arrest of someone that you know through your job experience to be a danger to the community. And they're getting an appearance ticket, and they're actually back on the street before you're done with all of your paperwork. And it's a very it's soul crushing, to be honest, when you're a patrol officer or you're a detective out there following up on crimes, or supervisors. Our first line supervisors are very active still. They'll even take calls off the board. And to be out there and working as hard as you can for your friends and family and community, to just see that work go up in smoke and somebody being put right back on the street. The phrase that everyone uses, catch and release, and that is what it feels like.
So, obviously, you hear about this a lot. On social media, you hear a lot of frustration about this subject, and it seems so illogical.
Sure. So, I mean, here's a real-world example. So, you've got a guy that is urinating on the side of a building after he just stole a beer from a store. That store calls the police show up, and you get an appearance ticket. So, if I show up and I'm the patrol officer, I'll get all your information. I'll hand you a piece of paper that says when you have to go to court. And then I leave. And then when he gets thirsty, he steals another beer. And when he's got to pee, pees on the wall again. And those are road communities because, for instance, you've got all over Buffalo multi-unit buildings. You've got in one building a store, and above it multiple apartments, and next door multiple apartments. That store maybe at one time was a nice store where you can go in and get some fresh produce and some snacks. And over time, because of the clientele that comes in and steals and urinates and is a public nuisance and deals drugs, now all of a sudden that store owner doesn't want to own that store anymore and sells to someone that has a lesser quality store.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden the person who was living above a decent store is living above a lesser quality store and having to deal with all that nuisance. So now they move out. now a lesser quality resident moves in. So now the neighbor doesn't want to live there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just how you deteriorate a neighborhood, through these low-level crimes that don't seem to want to be taken serious all of a sudden in New York State and Buffalo.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I've tuned into this subject matter so closely, is because of the exact domino effect that you just laid out.
Mm-hmm.
This is a show about real estate and development predominantly,
Yes.
but real estate and development doesn't live in a vacuum.
Right.
These are factors that dramatically impact the value of real estate, the desire for real estate, the desire to want to live in specific neighborhoods, so on. The quality of life in those neighborhoods, you name it. Going back to my last question about this just not making much sense, why would any elected official have any motivation to institute this type of reform?
So that I can't answer on the macro or micro level. I
Sure.
can just give you, I guess it'd be a bit of a micro. I could give you, like, from the PBA's perspective, we think that we're experiencing this defund the police movement that was so rampant 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that that there was trouble just taking all the funding from police departments and giving them to different social entities. It seems, though, that now we're seeing this trickle down, almost like a deconstructed version of defund the police, where if you make the job so awful that people hit 20 years and retire the day they can, and you make it so untenable that no one wants the job, well, now you've de facto defunded the police, because you're having people retire, you're not replacing them. If you have less officers, you need less patrol cars, you need less buildings, you need less support staff, and this is how you slowly defund the police.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously, I think you saw my video about that prompted you to kind of reach out, and I would imagine anybody that hearing you say that probably thought we knew each other before meeting an hour ago. But it was very transparent to me that was the case. And I as a city resident, I followed obviously the last mayoral race with Byron Brown having to conduct a write-in campaign against the individual that won the Democratic primary, and she was a very vocal defund the police candidate, and she was endorsed by our current mayor. That's kind of where I put the pieces together to land on maybe, this administration woke up to the fact that the branding of defund the police wasn't necessarily a very good political slogan. But in the tactics being very transparently employed wasn't popular. But if you go about it the way that you just eloquently laid out, you get to the same ends, essentially.
Yes, if you look at the politicians that were supportive and championing defund the police, many of them are still in politics. And you would think then, unless they've come out and vocally denounced that process, then they're probably still harboring those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And we're struggling with that in Buffalo because our mayor is very social media active, and there's just TikToks every day, videos every day, and some of them are informative and helpful to the public, and some of them are clicks. And what we've noticed, though, in the 350 plus social media videos, there's nothing supporting the police.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to believe that this mayor has distanced himself from defund the police when he's never actually distanced himself from defund the police.
So, John, I'd imagine you spend a lot of time pondering, why would anybody in government be anti-police, right? I mean, you gotta put yourself in the mental framework of somebody that is critical of law enforcement in general. What do you think you have to combat in the minds of those individuals to kind of bridge that divide a little bit, or potentially extend an olive branch to say, hey, look, we're all here for the betterment of the community. We understand that you have X, Y, Z issue with law enforcement. How would you broach that conversation?
Well, I don't either. I come from a law enforcement family, so I have 3 uncles. All 3 of them are police officers. One for the Erie County Sheriff's Department, one for West Seneca, and one for Buffalo. My brother just retired from the Erie County Sheriff's Department as a detective. My mother was actually a head nurse at the holding center. So law enforcement, it's in my family. So I've grown up around the stories about, you hear the fun stories about running through yards and catching guys with guns and making the streets safer. But I've also heard countless stories about taking kids out for pizza and showing up to community events off duty to help out and helping out a restaurant when they're having a tough time. So I'm used to hearing all the good things about law enforcement. And all I can say is, for whatever reason, being against the police was in vogue in 2020, 2021, 2022. And I think a lot of politicians who maybe in their heart don't dislike the police, but the party or their constituents or the way the wind was blowing almost dictated for them to stay in politics to go that direction. And now that we are years removed from it and saw what an absolute failure defund the police was, and what a farce a lot of the things that went into it that justified it are, you're seeing some of these politicians slowly or more quickly start now distancing themselves from those beliefs. But not all of them. And some of them did believe into it and did buy into it. And we're dealing with that. And there is still a belief out there that there are politicians that want to get rid of the police. And I believe Ithaca just officially rubber stamped their non-weaponized response unit. So we're keeping close eye on those kinds of things, because if you respond to what's a fireworks call and you get there and those fireworks weren't fireworks, what are you going to do in that situation? Or the training is completely different. We go to a very intensive academy. So, and then you have a field training situation where you operate with an officer for 16 weeks before you're ever allowed to answer a call on your own. And if you've got untrained citizens responding to calls, they may not have the tact or understanding on how to de-escalate. And now when it gets out of hand, the police are called. And now we've got to go there and unravel the problem that's already been compromised and made worse and compounded. So we just see them as more trouble than actual help as police officers. And we would say also they infringe on the exclusivity of the Buffalo Police Department and the Buffalo PBA to operate within the city of Buffalo. The reality is the city of Buffalo should be able to use its own police department to solve crime and prevent crime. Shouldn't have to be reaching out to state entities and county entities. The city of Buffalo is more than capable of handling its own business if you'll support the police and staff them properly.
Well, let's go back to that specific topic on staffing. You're hearing the mayor's administration say a number of things. You're actually hearing Mayor Sean Ryan say one thing specifically, that there is not a staffing problem currently. And you're hearing one of his countless deputy mayors talk about the fact that there are conversations about conversations to be scheduled. So give us a little bit more information, because you're on the other end of that phone, right?
Certainly.
Give us some more information on, number one, why is there that disconnect? Why does the mayor, in your opinion, think that there's not a staffing problem, there's not a morale problem? And then what would your rebuttal to that be? And then in addition to that, why are we hearing that, no, there's planned negotiations coming in the fall or in the winter?
Certainly. So I can start with saying the reason, in my opinion, that the mayor thinks that there are no staffing issues and no morale issues is because he refuses to sit down and talk to me. Because I can tell him the same things I'm about to tell you. In 2025, we had 47 officers retire. 4 years prior, we had 22 retire, 18 retire, 18 retire, 22 retire. So it more than doubled last year. We only hired 13 officers last year to replace 47. This year, we're already at 15, and we haven't had a single snowflake, and that's when retirements really pick up. We've only hired 4 this year. So when you put those numbers together, you're talking about trying to replace 47 with 13 and 15 and counting with 4. So I don't know where they're saying staffing numbers are fine, unless they're truly just trying to use a semantics issue and saying every shift is filled. And that is true. A shift never goes unfilled in Buffalo because we are first responders and we can be forced. And that is what's happening. We're being forced at record numbers. And of course, people want to complain often about response times, and
Yeah.
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
When you call the police, you want a response in a timely fashion, but there are priorities.
Yeah.
So, as a patrol officer, I was routinely rerouted. So, if you are on your way to a neighbor dispute in the city of Buffalo, that call will 100% be answered, but it may be dispatched several times because you get dispatched to a neighbor dispute. You're driving there, you're on your way, and a violent domestic comes out, and you're rerouted.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when there's not enough police officers to answer even the violent calls, those other calls, they get pushed way down the list. Next thing you know, the reason you think we never responded was we came to your neighbor dispute 6 hours later. And when we knocked on the door, you were sound asleep. I assure you that every single call in the city of Buffalo gets answered. But I could see why people don't believe that or don't appreciate the response time.
Yeah.
And as there's less officers, the response time is going to get worse. So that's one half of the question. And the other half is regarding a contract. I'm not sure why they're saying that we're in negotiations because we have not had a single actual contract negotiation since we met with Chris Scanlon last year. We have just recently met the outside law firm that the city's hired to begin negotiating, and we're trying to work on dates to come together. But we have not had an official contract negotiation with this mayor's team.
Well, you just mentioned something that I was unaware of. So the city's retained outside counsel to negotiate this contract on their behalf?
Certainly, and I don't understand that. To be honest, they have corporate counsel employed in the city of Buffalo.
Right.
I'm sure they could give you a reason that may or may not make sense on why a city that's claiming to be so broke is hiring additional law firms,
Right.
plural, to deal with all these contracts because there are 8 unions out of contract.
Yeah.
And I'm certain that every single union president will do the right thing and say they deserve to be at the front of the line.
Of course.
And I'm not going to disagree with any of them. But what I will say is I think everyone understands that public safety is the most important thing that a city provides.
Absolutely.
And while you absolutely need firemen, they're heroes. You absolutely need garbage men and garbage women. There's no doubt about that. No one wants a disgusting city.
Yeah.
Crossing guards are vitally important, right? All these things need to be addressed. But the reality is all of these things come through and work through safety, the element of public safety.
Sure.
And the fact that we're so far down the quote-unquote priority list of negotiations, it's a slap in the face to the citizens of Buffalo and to the members of the Buffalo PBA who've been working so long without a contract and continue to show up every single day and work as hard as possible. And I can tell you firsthand, there is a morale problem within the department, but it has nothing to do with how much these guys love helping and doing their jobs for the citizens and their friends and family in the city of Buffalo. The members of the Buffalo PBA love the city of Buffalo.
Yeah.
This is where we live. This is where we go out to have coffee with our parents. This is where our kids play sports. This is where we go on first dates. We love the city of Buffalo, but we're not feeling any love back from the mayor's office. And I don't want to paint with a broad brush. There are members of the Common Council we get along with very well.
Sure.
There are politicians in the Buffalo area that we get along with very well. But in the mayor's office, that's a mayor and bloated with 4 deputy mayors, we don't have a very good relationship.
Well, mentioning the Common Council, I mean, one of the members of the Common Council is the individual that you endorsed for mayor of the city of Buffalo. So you think there's any bad blood there with the mayor that won that race that you did not endorse?
Certainly. He's mentioned to me multiple times that he was frustrated that we'd endorse him. I've mentioned to him, and I guess people should know this about the process, the PBA does not go out seeking candidates to endorse. We are approached by candidates for endorsement. Sean Ryan never sought our endorsement. So it was easy to not endorse him.
Really?
Because he never sought our endorsement. Now, I'm not saying we would or would not have.
Yeah.
I can say that every single person who sought our endorsement that was running for the mayor of Buffalo either received a full endorsement or a monetary donation. So although we did endorse and fully endorse one candidate, we did also financially contribute to another candidate because they were the only 2 that took the time to reach out to the Buffalo PBA and support law enforcement.
Well, that is an interesting data point I was completely unaware of. Wow. That's
Yes.
eye-opening. So, again, kind of going back to that, again, completely speculative motivation of this mayor, it kind of seems like he benefited from the fact that he wasn't attached or endorsed by the local PBA. I know he's endorsed by a statewide police union, if I'm not mistaken.
So he was endorsed by essentially the Parks Police. So it's the state police of New York. So it's not the New York State Troopers.
Okay.
It's this conglomerate of like police that they're great officers. They do a lot of good work, but they're a small subset of police, and they're like NCON police paired up with SUNY police. So, but I will say that even one of their own members actually did break away and endorse Scanlon. So actually, through the Western New York Police Foundation, 29 local agencies endorsed Scanlon in addition to the Buffalo Police Department. And this one smaller entity that operates more out of Albany, where Sean Ryan's done most of his work as a politician, did endorse him. They actually did reach out and apologize because they didn't fully understand what they'd done.
Wow. So John, let's kind of just do a little bit of an exercise. Let's say you're at the table now, you're at the negotiating table, or at least the conversation table with the mayor and his administration on a negotiation. What are the three top terms or the three top points that you'd really like to come to some agreement upon?
Certainly. So I think anyone that works for a living would want to be compensated monetarily. So I don't think it's crazy to say that one of the top three things we'd want to talk about is a raise. In addition to that, the next couple of things would be work-life balance and in the environment you work on and work in. The reality is our officers are overworked. They're being forced. There's ways to get around that in the meantime while you're hiring, because the problem is we need to hire a lot of officers. That's going to take time. But there are ways, other departments that use different shifts and work different, the way they pay their details or the way that they compensate their details, whether that be monetarily or with time. So we see a shift with younger officers that they value time more than overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So time off would be something that would be absolutely on the negotiation table. And there's just, the reality is what needs to be done is sat down, like you and I are having a discussion right now, but the reality is policing throughout New York State is hemorrhaging officers. We're having mass retirements and we're not being able to recruit. Our city doesn't seem to want to recruit because we don't even have a test to recruit from. But that being said, there needs to be a way to sit down and come up with a dynamic contract and negotiate it together and get creative with how do we retain the officers that we have and recruit new officers.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the Buffalo Police Department, there are no road sergeants. We go right from patrol to lieutenant as the first supervisory promotion.
Okay.
And a lot of departments have sergeants, which is kind of like a liaison type role.
Yeah.
Where you get a promotion, but you still work on the road and you kind of answer, you're like a middleman to the lieutenant. In our department, we don't have those because for the longest time, the city got away with not needing them because we had senior officers, guys and girls with 20 plus years, 25 years, and they de facto were sergeants, right? Without the pay grade, without the title. They were proud to be Buffalo police officers, and they enjoyed helping the new guy and the new girl out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't have them anymore. People are retiring the moment they hit 20, and people are promoting because we don't have enough people to promote from lists.
Right.
And as people retire, we can't replace them. So a senior officer at this point is going to be 6, 7, 8 years. And when you're brand new to any line of work, somebody with 24 years that gives you some advice, even if it's firm, you might not like hearing it, but you know there's something to it.
It means something.
It's a little harder when a guy or girl with 7 years tries to tell you what to do.
Sure.
And especially if they're not in a supervisory role, especially if they got on at 20 and you got on at 26.
Yeah.
Well, now all of a sudden a guy that's a year younger than you is going to tell you what to do.
Right.
So we are hemorrhaging leadership. We are currently 5 below the contractual minimum at lieutenant. And 5 doesn't sound like a lot, but the contractual minimum is it represents 6%. So we need more officers, and we need to promote from within.
Yeah.
And so we're struggling in that way as well.
You would have to, with those working conditions, the forced overtime, and all of the challenges that you've laid out, you would imagine even the people that are critical of law enforcement would say, this is a recipe for disaster. These are people that are overworked, they're stressed out, they're getting frustrated with their own internal leadership, they're getting frustrated with municipal leadership. That's a recipe, that's a ticking time bomb, essentially.
We are seeing that, and we're seeing it from all sides of the political world, because I know everyone wants to make all these police issues political, and there is some truth to that.
Sure.
But I will say that public safety should be nonpartisan.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what side of the aisle you stand on or whether you're down the middle, you need to support law enforcement and you need to support public safety, or you won't have anything worth protecting.
Sure.
And the reality is, the Buffalo PBA, when anybody comes to us and seeks an endorsement, we don't ask what party they belong to.
Right.
We ask, do you support the police? Do you support public safety? And those are important things that the leadership of Buffalo needs to have, in our opinion.
I would agree as a member of the citizenry. I would absolutely agree with that.
And that is another area where we struggle with. The mayor is very openly pro-union.
Yeah.
But it does seem to stop at public safety union. So you're either pro-labor or you're not. It can't stop at law enforcement, in our opinion.
Yeah.
Can't claim to be pro-union, pro-labor, but stop at certain unions and certain labor.
Sure. Well, when it comes down to the union and it comes down to, let's focus maybe on the recruiting tools that you have. Let's comp the city of Buffalo in their, let's call their recruitment package, right? Salary, benefits, so on. And let's comp it to, let's say, the Amherst package. What does that discrepancy look like?
So I don't have their contract in front of me, but I can tell you just from running some basic numbers and looking at outside agencies, whether they're big like the state troopers, or we look towards Rochester and Syracuse for a lot of our comps, Erie County sheriffs, we are underpaid.
Mm-hmm.
We're underpaid by a fair amount. Now, I think for the longest time, the trade-off there was you got to be a Buffalo police officer.
Yeah.
And there was like an intrinsic value to that.
Yeah.
Where you got to be a part of the coolest department in the region. And I'm not putting down any of the suburban agencies.
Sure.
But if you want to have a condensed hair on fire wild career,
Yeah.
it's going to be in the city of Buffalo. I mean,
Right.
Buffalo is a real city. I think it gets skewed because New York City is so massive, but
Right.
we're the second largest city in the state. And we're, depending on what metric you use, we're like the 62nd largest city in the entire country.
Right.
You're going to have a volume of police work. And I'm not putting down the suburbs. I have a nephew who works for Hamburg, and his career is going to be, he's going to see all the same things I've seen in my career, but he's going to see them over 20 years, what I've seen in 3.
Right.
So there was
Some may look at that as a benefit.
and it
Safer.
was. Yes, I will say that. But if you really want to
be a cop, yeah.
yes. So there was a value in that
Yeah.
like the city got away with for years. Like, hey, we don't have trouble recruiting because people want to go be Buffalo cops.
Yeah.
It's a prestigious job in the world of law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So for years, that was something the city could kind of use to their advantage in negotiations.
Yeah.
But that is no longer the case. They can't recruit. They're kind of refusing to recruit. But even when they do, the days of saying, hey, we're going to give a police test and 4,000 people show up to the convention center, they are over. You need to go out of your way to actually dynamically recruit.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just go to the Galleria Mall and say, sign up for this police test. I'll give you a food voucher
Yeah.
for the Sbarro. And then people take the voucher, sign up for the test, and never show up.
Sure.
What I think needs to be done is I think residency needs to be waived. And I think what needs to happen is you go around to these colleges and you go to every softball team and every lacrosse team and every baseball team. And you say, hey, competitive people, you want to stay in shape? You want to have a competitive job? You want to be able to compare yourself to others? Come be a Buffalo police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do the other traditional recruiting, but I think those are the kinds of citizenry that might still want to be police officers.
Right.
So I think if you went and did that, there's a lot of colleges within an hour and a half of Buffalo.
Sure.
I mean, Rochester and Syracuse, that's what they're doing. They're recruiting. I mean, last recruiting cycle for Rochester, they had a giant flashing billboard on Chippewa asking people to come to Rochester and be police
Come on.
and touting how much more money they made.
Wow.
So
That's got to drive you nuts.
it's not fun to see. No.
Yeah.
When you are working forced
Oh, yeah.
overtime on Chippewa, and you're sitting there breaking up fights left and right,
Oh
and then
my
you
God.
look up and see a neon lights. Come to Rochester, make 20,000 more.
Yeah, we take care of our own here.
It's tough. Now that being said, Rochester's having tough time recruiting as well.
Yeah.
Everyone's feeling it. Syracuse has just recently waived their residency.
Yeah. No, I've seen the statewide numbers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discrepancy between the budget approved officers and the amount of officers that are on the actual force across for all the major cities across the state. So that's why I led with that point. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of a PR issue that seems to be going on.
And it's important to acknowledge that because
Yeah.
the city of Buffalo, the mayor himself set the budget to be approved by the Common Council.
Yeah.
And that budget was for 814 sworn officers.
Right.
We're at 712.
Right.
So we're over 100 below his own estimate.
Well, you get the best of both worlds, right? You get to say, well, I've approved all of these officers. Then you get to say, well, we came in under budget because we're not spending money on all these officers. And then lastly, if that is a motivation, you get less officers.
And then you use it against us again in the public when you claim, oh, look how much overtime these greedy officers are.
Right.
And the reality is,
And it's forced.
right. Don't get me wrong. There is an amount of overtime that I think, and it's not unique to police and fire.
Yeah.
There's an amount of overtime that if you can get it, you'd love to, right?
Sure.
You want to take your family on vacation.
Yeah.
Maybe your kid's getting ready to go to college. You want to get them a used car. Like,
Yeah.
there's an amount of overtime that, like, oh, if I could find a way to scratch together an extra $4,200, that'd be great. It's not free. There's a misnomer that overtime like comes at no cost. You're still working.
Yeah.
So most people, when they work, they want to be compensated.
No doubt.
But when it gets to the point where you're making tens of thousands of dollars in hundreds of hours of overtime that you necessarily don't need or want,
right.
it is a detriment to your work-life balance, and you see cracks in the home life, you see
Sure.
cracks in the personal life, and these are not things that we want, and
Yeah.
I particularly do not want for my members.
Mm-hmm.
They create additional issues for me to have to deal with.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden you're working too much and you're becoming short with the people around you,
Yeah.
the people you work with, the citizens.
Yeah.
It makes my job a little more difficult because my job is ultimately the main job I have is to smooth things over.
Mhm.
If I were to kind of like put it in layman's terms, as president of the PBA, I smooth things over. And I have
Yeah.
a wonderful team. Michael Maritato is my first vice president. Mark Goodspeed, second vice president. Meg Sullivan is an incredible recording secretary. And Rob Danner is our treasurer. But he does so much more than just balance our books. And thankfully, I have a team that helps me smooth things over.
Yeah.
And we have a very eclectic, different groups. You know, we have different amounts of years. We worked in different districts. We have different ranks. And we are able to fan out and smooth a lot of things over.
Yeah.
But it does get more difficult when you have officers working unwanted, forced overtime
Yeah.
at numbers that are unsustainable.
Right. So just as one more contextual kind of frame of reference, is there any precedent for this lack of a contract?
Unfortunately, in Buffalo, there is. Our most recent contract was negotiated, and it was a great contract for both parties, got a lot of great things out of it. But they're having contracts that just end up going to PERB, which is basically the Public Employee Relation Board. And we've already contacted them. I don't believe we're at the level where we can declare impasse just yet, but I believe they are looking into whether a mediator will be assigned, and from there an arbitrator.
Right.
And unfortunately, it does look like we'll have to negotiate our contract through the state arbitrator.
Really?
And we're not completely at that point yet. We have met with the city's outside lawyers,
Okay.
and we're working on dates to potentially work on contract consolidation and negotiation. But unfortunately, we've seen with this administration, the goalposts continually get moved back. And when things are scheduled, so to speak, or agreed to in verbally, they don't come to fruition. And until we actually sit down and have an official contract negotiation, we're going to pursue the PERB route until there's a reason not to.
I could only imagine what that desk looks like.
Yeah, so PERB is never ideal, right?
Yeah.
You don't want somebody coming in, and you don't want to go to mom and dad for everything. You want to
Yeah.
be able to settle things yourself.
Sure.
But unfortunately, it comes to that, and then that's what they'll do.
No. John, we're now at the point of the show that we do as a recurring segment. It's called the Wheel of Buffalo.
Okay.
All right, we have the Wheel of Buffalo here. So, John, I'm going to invite you to spin the Wheel of Buffalo, and you're going to land on a topic of which you will provide a unscripted answer on. So, a local delusion. So, from your perspective, John, now this could be of any subject matter. It doesn't need to be from the political persuasion. It doesn't have to be from law enforcement. But give us a general, in your opinion, a delusion that folks in Buffalo seem to gravitate towards.
I think that it's always cold here. I mean, Buffalo is pretty unique in that we have 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And understandably, winter is like 5 months, so it's disproportional.
Yeah.
But it makes us tougher, and it gives you all kinds of winter activities to do.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to realize that Buffalo has 4 seasons. There's a short spring and a real nice fall, and there's a lot of hunters that enjoy the nice fall in the Buffalo area. And summer is great in Buffalo, and people get out of their houses and get a whole lot of fun stuff to do. Unfortunately, in the summer, crime does go up because it is hot and tempers flare and people are out of the house interacting more. So that is something as police we need to deal with. But I would say that's kind of a local delusion that Buffalo's just always cold and always miserable.
Well, thank you, John, for that. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to state, on the record here for the citizens of the city of Buffalo that we haven't covered?
Sure. I guess to the citizens of Buffalo, I would just want to reiterate that by all the numbers, prior to just this summer, we had 2 years of historic crime lows in the city of Buffalo. And the PBA has been warning for quite some time now that that's unsustainable based on the numbers we have. A rubber band can only stretch so far, and that rubber band has snapped. And we're seeing violence in the city of Buffalo. And I don't want to scare people, but I do want everyone to understand Buffalo is less safe than it was a year ago. And we need to come up with a way to retain the officers we have, bring in new recruits, and make the job more appetizing. And the way to do that is to sit down, the city and the PBA, to come together and negotiate a dynamic, creative contract. And I don't mean this to sound like the department and the union don't get along. There's always going to be headbutting between labor and management, but for the most part, the PBA and the department work together just fine. I think if you were to ask the leadership in our department, they also want to retain who we have and bring in new officers. The problem right now in the city of Buffalo is that we're having trouble connecting with the mayor and his office. And in the meantime, the city of Buffalo is going to be less safe for the residents. And what we're starting to see, like on Chippewa, and when talking to people that participate in travel sports, we're getting less. We're getting less tourism. We're getting less visitors. The Chippewa is struggling. Some of the restaurant owners are seeing decreases in their profits because there's just not enough support. And when you then double down, as we've seen over the last couple of weekends on Chippewa, you're using so many resources to do so, the remainder of the city suffers and becomes less safe.
Sure.
And you can only stretch so far. And the PBA membership will continue to show up to every call and do the best that we absolutely can to keep the city of Buffalo safe, to prevent crime, and then follow up and solve crime. But we do need assistance, and it does have to come in the way of City Hall and the mayor sitting down with the Buffalo PBA, coming together, working together on a contract that will continue to keep Buffalo safe.
Well, John, I don't envy your position, but I'm very grateful and thankful that you're in it.
Well, I appreciate you and your time. And said I saw your shorts, I think they'd be called, right?
Yeah.
I'm not super tech savvy. If you look at my history on social media, it only begins 3 months ago,
right,
when it was time to start sounding the alarm.
That's about the time we launched Lock in Buffalo.
Well,
so
there you go.
The timing was perfect.
I'm just figuring out as I go here, just trying to figure out how to let everyone know that the PBA loves the city of Buffalo, but we need help.
Yeah.
And I was happy to reach out. It was great to find out that you're also a Monsignor Martin High School graduate.
Yeah.
And we love the city of Buffalo.
Sure do.
And I really do appreciate the ability to get out in front of the city of Buffalo and the surrounding suburbs, because our crimes and problems don't stop at the city border.
No question.
You know what I mean? We're seeing right now, it's all over the news, the car thefts in Clarence.
God. It's nuts.
And I'm fairly confident, and I don't think I'm going to have egg on my face saying the car thieves in Clarence are from Buffalo.
Oh, so my God, of course.
This crime is spilling out into the suburbs.
Sure.
So hopefully we can get support from the surrounding areas as well, because people don't want to move to the first-ring suburbs if this is what they're going to have to deal with.
No doubt. I mean, we could do a whole and quite honestly, John, I'd love to have you on again because, I know the a member of the council is proposing some pretty wacky new regulations around first-time offenders for car thefts, and I mean, I live on. I'm not going to say where I live, but
I understand.
I live on a really nice street in North Buffalo, and I mean, many of my neighbors, their cars have been stolen right out of their front driveway. I have a Ring camera that's literally filmed it, and these kids are just walking up with little key fobs. They're opening the door and they're driving away. So obviously they're cloning them. I mean, it couldn't be easier to steal a car right now. And if you know you're only going to get a slap on the wrist, what the hell is stopping you?
Well, and I can say that I just had lunch last week with the council member where you live, Golenbeck, and we had a wonderful meeting, and he couldn't be more frustrated at that kind of event. And like I said, I don't want to paint with a broad stroke.
Yeah.
We have the PBA has a wonderful working relationship with Chris Scanlon, and we work really well with Leah Halton Pope.
Yeah.
We work really well with Golenbeck. Has been a developing wonderful relationship we have, and I'm sure I'm leaving people out, and I'll feel bad about that when I get home. But many members of the Common Council are supportive of the police and want a better Buffalo and want a safe Buffalo. So it's important to know that it's not everyone in politics, and it's not all the news agencies, and there are people who support the police. And what we're seeing, and I know I did mention earlier, but I do think it's worth mentioning again, the citizens have been more vocal. And all of a sudden, the citizens who were pro-police their whole lives and then quieted down the last few years, all of a sudden they are coming out and they're bringing that pro-police with them after they leave and lock the door. And on their way to work, they stop and say hello to the police and thank us for what we do. And that sounds hokey, but it really, truly does make a difference.
Sure.
When people support the police and tell us that they support the police and tell their friends and family that they support the police, because I think the only way that we are going to get a contract and find a way to fix this, honestly, is going to be from public pressure.
Yeah.
I don't get the impression this mayor has any desire to work with the Buffalo PBA. And hopefully, if he sees that the people that he represents do want a contract and do want safety in the city of Buffalo, that may move the needle for him.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it will take. It may be just a grudge that he's dug in on and will not come off of. That is how it feels.
Yeah, it did.
So we shall see.
As a outside observer, that's kind of what I landed on.
Yeah.
And again, you don't want to be a conspiracy theorist or try to peg somebody for their motivations without truly hearing it from them. But it's all the arrows kind of point in that direction.
Well, and no relationship is unsalvageable. I have not said no to not a single person who has asked me to go get coffee or lunch. I say yes to every single one. I say yes to every news entity, except at this point, the Buffalo News. So I will, and there's one member of the Buffalo News I still speak with. So I will meet with anyone until they give us a reason not to. So I do hope at some point Sean Ryan says, "Hey, enough's enough.
Yeah.
Let's get a coffee. Let's figure this out." But
Well, let's hope so, because there is a lot on the line.
yes, I agree.
A lot's changed in a year, right? You've seen public safety deteriorate pretty rapidly in a very short period of time.
Yes.
And the criminal element of the city's community only feels more emboldened when that happens. So it's concerning for residents. As a member of that group of people, I could say that for a fact. But on that note, John, I can't thank you enough for reaching out, for being a fan of the platform and the show and watching the content and sharing the content. Like I said before, I don't envy your position, but I'm very, very thankful that you're in it. I think you're doing a phenomenal job, and I appreciate you being vocal and sharing some of your opinions here on Lock in Buffalo. And if you don't follow Lock in Buffalo, please take a moment to subscribe on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. Follow what we're doing to grow the city of Buffalo.